Dude, you got sprung. Hey. Elvis, hey buddy. What you doing, mate? Hey? Just chilling? Cool. G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. How y'all doing? So, in the last episode, I mentioned our next project, and here it is. What a ripper. So this is our neighbours 6x4 box trailer. As you can see, we've already started ripping the thing apart, and the neighbour complained of what he thought was wheel bearings. We soon found out that it wasn't wheel bearings. This leaf spring here is actually broken. Straight off there, it's broken. And then this tire, oh no, she no good. So we ripped it apart. These leaf springs were held in down here with a pin that somebody has just put in through there and then welded. It's supposed to be a bolt. So we've done that. We've taken both sides out, and if I take you inside, I'll be able to show you some more. So we've already, this hub is still attached. We've already taken that one off just to have a look at the bearings, see whether they were salvageable. So shortly I'll take this one off. I'll go through that with you guys. And if I go in here, we should be able to find the ones that we've already cleaned up and show you what they look like somewhere. In there. So we've cleaned them up, given them a good degrease, and they're actually in pretty good condition. So to save the guy some money, we're just going to repack them with grease and put it back together. So the plan at this stage is we've got 2 new springs, we've got 2 new tires. We're going to reuse the bearings that we've got. We've got new hardware, and then with the springs that we've got, the mounting points there and there are going to have to change. So we've got new ones of them, and we'll go through all that with you guys as well. So stick around and we'll get cracking on that. Righto, so we've just been down to the local trailer shop to get ourselves the parts we require. As you can see here, we've got 2 new springs, we've got some new shackles, we've got some new locating mounts that we'll have to weld onto the trailer. So that's our front one, and then we've got our rear slipper which slides over that. We've also got our plates for our shackles, and we've got our actual locating pins. So what you've got is, if I come over here, you've got your axle. Now this one, normally they're welded on. This one had them, they were all rusted out, but they were never actually welded on to the axle. So when we set it all up, we'll position them on the axle, and what they do is they relocate onto this little pin here, and that stops your axle from moving. Obviously there's always going to be a little bit of movement, but you can't help that. So when we set it up, we'll sit the axle on, we'll sit these pads on here, we'll sit the axle on there, we'll give it a tack, we'll take it off, and then we'll weld right around it, and that will be for that. These brackets here, this one here and that one there, we're going to cut these ones off, and these new ones will get relocated under here as well. The main thing that we'll have to do is make sure we get our center line, and so that our center line lines up with our locating pin. That'll give us our centre inside the wheel well here, so that when we have our wheel on, we won't hit anything. Now we managed to go to the wreckers, get ourselves 2 second-hand tyres. They are different tread pattern, but it's a trailer, it doesn't matter. So, and as you can see, still plenty of tread on them. So that's going to work well. We're going to get the shop to fit them up for me. The rest of it we'll do ourselves. I'm also going to try and straighten out this guard, do a bit of panel beating on it. Same with this side. We'll reshape it, refold this edge, and again cut them off and use the new stuff. Righto, we'll bust out the grinder and we'll get cracking on that. So now that I've cut all 4 brackets off, it's time to start measuring up for the new brackets. So what I do is I start by finding the center at the top, and then I find the center at the bottom, connect them up, make sure it's square, and then I've got a datum that I can work from there. Now I need to find the center of the spring and find out what that distance is. So using a straight edge and a square, I can find where the center is, and then I can measure out from there to the eyelet. That gives me the distance that I need to then go from the center line to where the center line of the new bracket. And as you can see, it's 331.5 millimeters. So now what I can do is I can come back to the trailer, and from my datum line I can measure out 331.5 millimeters, and that'll be the center line of my new bracket. It was at this point that we realized that the guards were actually 40 mil difference, one of them being either 40 mil back or the other one being 40 mil forward. So what that meant was that our axle would be at an angle. So it was at this point we decided, well, we'll go this far, we might as well keep on going. So we cut the guard off and we move it back 40 mil. Now I pull out the trusty old MIG. I've got my magnet there to hold my bracket in place. Now I'm just tack welding it all in at this stage, just to make sure that it's where it needs to be, and then I'll finalise all the welding a bit later down the track. So it was at this point that Dad walked over and said, why don't we just flip the trailer over, that way it'll be easier to work on. So that's what we did, and it certainly did make life a lot easier. What I'm doing now is just repairing some of the holes and rust that were in the frame. This main one here is from that broken spring that I showed you earlier. It had just been wearing its way through the frame over the last however many years. So I'll get on with that, and then we can start setting up everything else.
So now that all the holes and rust have been repaired, I've mocked it all up. I've got the springs in, the axle sitting there, and I'm just measuring it all to make sure that it's square and centered. That way when it's going down the street, it's going straight and not driving crooked. Once I'm happy with my measurements and where the axle's sitting, I can now go along and weld all the way around on all 4 brackets, and that way that's all done and I can move on to the next job. So moving right along now, it's time to remove my hub from the axle. So there's a couple of different ways you can remove these caps. Some people use a hammer, some people use pliers. I just like to use an old screwdriver in the back there, and that way it doesn't damage the cap. Eventually, a bit of patience, it'll come off. Now it's time to remove the split pin, and then grab your shifter or spanner and undo the nut. Once you've undone that nut, you can then remove the hub and it'll just slide straight off your axle. So now with the hub removed, I've taken it over to the vise so that I can hammer out the old seal. Sometimes they just pop out, other times you've got to actually hammer them out. So that's what I'm doing here, that way I can get to the big bearing, give it all clean, and then put it back together. Now it's time just to give it all a good clean. Good wire brush helps here. You can get different ones for your drill, or you can just use the old handheld one. Or if you've got a bench grinder that's got a little wheel on it, you can use one of them as well. It just gets a bit of the old rust off. It just cleans it up. I'm not going too overboard here. If it was my trailer, I'd probably paint them, bring them back to new. But being an old trailer that just sits around, it's not really worth it. And as you can see, it's come up a treat. And of course it decided to start raining, so we wheeled the trailer inside, and now that we're going to start putting the thing back together, we've actually flipped it back over. That way I can put the guard back on and the tie down rail as well. So now we can finally start the process of putting it all back together, starting with that rail. I've got that in place, and then that way I've got somewhere to weld the guard to when I put it back on.
Welcome back, guys. It's about day 4, 5, 6. Actually, I don't know. I've lost count. Everything we've been doing to this trailer just keeps fighting us every step. But we're nearly there. Just a few more things to do today and we should get there. So, just let you know what's been going on. So, we've got the springs all mounted up in our perch. We were going to run the axle this way around, however, which was the way it was originally, but because with the new spring setup, once we mounted the tyre, it was just too high off the ground. So one of today's jobs, cut them off, spin it round, re-weld it back on. We then had an issue with our shackles. 3 of the 4, the thread didn't match the nut, so we had to go and get new ones of them. And then, where are they? We had to get, in the end, 2 new rims and 2 new tyres. So, the old rim with those second-hand tyres we got, when they tried to mount it, the rim just shredded the tyre. So, being a 14-inch tyre, they're hard to come by. So, we've actually gone to the wreckers. I spent 2 hours there yesterday, and I found 2 15-inch rims. Which are in a lot better condition, and then I found 2 tyres, so all we've done is gone down in the sidewall. So it's still 195, it's just now 60 by 15 instead of a 65-15. So the rolling diameter is still the same. So on this side we've already put the my old man has already put the hub and greased his bearings. I've still got to do mine, which I'm about to do. Once we do that, we can put it on, flip that axle, and that'll be it. Yeah, it's just been one of those things, like this guard 40mm out, so the axle was actually crooked, so we fixed that. That's about it. So I'll go and do my bearings, put that hub on, flip that axle, and that's about it. Righto, I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so we've gone through and cleaned up our bearings, as you can see. They're actually in pretty good condition. There's a little bit of movement there, but for what they are and for what the trailer is going to be used for, they're fine. So just a little bit of kerosene or degreaser, petrol if you do, if you want. Just make sure you wear some gloves. So the next thing we're going to do is pack these bearings with some grease. So we've got here, this one's boating grease, but any axle grease will do. So the way I do it, you can buy like a plunging setup where you fill up the plunger with grease, you put your bearing in it, and then you squeeze it together, and that supposedly works. That's fine if you want to spend the money. Or the other way you can do it is you grab your bearing, open up your grease, pull your sleeves back. You can do this with bare hands. You know, it's messy, so you're wearing gloves is always a good thing. So get some grease, put it on your palm like that, get a bit more. Like so. Get your bearing in between your 2 fingers, and then you just sit there and you just start kneading away. Now the idea of this is your palm is pushing the grease up through the roller bearings until you start to see it coming out the top there. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's starting to come out the top, where's there. And then you just rotate the bearing, and then you keep going. Rotate the bearing. Move on to the next one. It is messy though, so. Anyway, I'll crack on, I'll do the others, and I'll get back to it. that's all done, as you can see, it makes quite a mess. Doesn't matter what you do, you always get some on you. What we're going to do now is, with a bit of this excess grease, use it to grease up my hub. So I've got my hub here. What I'm going to do is just start filling this up with grease in here. Greasing up my cone. I'll do both sides, and I'll actually chuck a little bit of grease on the inside as well. As you can see, it makes a mess. So I'm going to put him down there. I'm actually going to take these gloves off, if I can. Righto. So, put that back over to the side. What we're going to do is we'll put our big bearing in, then we'll put our cover over it. We'll take it over the trailer, we'll install it. Now what I like to do as well, I've put in the bearing, I'll just run a little bit more grease around it and fill it up a little bit, because this cover will take a little bit when it starts spinning. Okay, as you see, I've come over to the axle now. We're going to install it. Before I do, I'll just give it a quick clean with some Scotch-Brite. Make sure I remove any of the dirt. I'll put a little bit of grease on it, and then we'll install the hub. Alright. Just like that. So, clean my fingers. Put the cap back on my grease so you don't get any dirt in there. And we've got my hub here. We've put the seal on the back. Got my front bearing in. It'll probably pop out when I push it on the axle, but that's fine. Squeeze him on, like so. Bit of excess grease here that we can push back up in there, like so. Now just make sure it's seated at the back. Put your washer on. Lastly, your nut. So tighten your nut up. grab your shifter. I like to tighten up till it's tight, and then I'll back it off quarter of a turn, make sure it spins freely, and then you can go ahead and insert your split pin, just making sure you line up your holes with your two little gaps in your nuts. Okay, so installing the split pin, we've put it in. The way to do it is fold your long one like that out. Generally you go to about halfway of the axle thread there, and then with the back one you cut it off just enough to bend it round so that it doesn't touch the washer or the bearing in the back. Okay, as you can see, we've got our split pin in. So last thing to do is bang our cap on and we're good to go. Alright guys, so last thing we're going to do is we're just going to check the lights, make sure they all work. Right indicator. Yep. Left indicator. Yep. Brakes. Yep. Do you want to try lights or lights? Yeah, they work. Both sides, yep, all good. Just a quick tip, if your lights aren't working, before you start pulling globes and stuff, come down here to your connection point, and then in here you can see your little pins. So just grab a little screwdriver, just spread them apart a little bit, and then try that before you go. A lot of the times it's a good earth is what is the problem with lights, so just try that. Righto guys, so that's the end of this. It's all back on its wheels now. We've tightened everything up. We straightened this guard out. My old man did that. That's come up a treat. Come around this side. It's all done as well. We straightened this guard out as well. And what else did we do? We reconnected the chain. So that's all done. So that's it for this build. If you made it this far, I appreciate you guys watching. It's certainly been a struggle, this trailer, but we managed to get there in the end. We'll tow it up the street now to my neighbour and we'll give it back to him. So, thanks for watching. It's much appreciated, all the support that you guys have been giving me. I hope you continue to follow. Give us a thumbs up, give us a comment, subscribe, tell your friends about us, and we'll see you on the next one. Now the way I do it, I'll grab my spanner, I do it up till it's tight, and then I just back it off a quarter of a turn. Put in your little spring.
It's not a spring.
I know it's not a spring.
It's a split pin.
I know. But I was about to fix that and then you made me laugh. You're a dickhead. This is serious business.
Where's the baby? Where's my baby's muscle? Yeah, I go.
Don't make me chuck this grease at you.